Hello, I'm Christian Cassidy. I'm doing my performance review on The Woodsman, performed live. So I'll start with my synopsis of the story. So I didn't read anything up on the story before I watched it, so it kind of caught me by surprise when they said it took place in Oz. And then, so as the story goes on, you kind of figure out it's a story of the Tin Man. So basically, this locket that's a heart is passed down from the woodsman's parents to him, and this is kind of an important part of the story, so I just want to hit it early. So like his heart technically, so it runs through the story. He meets the woman he loves, gives her the heart, so she's technically his heart. As the story goes on, the witch tries to keep them apart, the same Wizard of Oz, same witch who fought Dorothy. So that as they run through the story, the witch tries to keep them apart because the woman he falls for is an old wizard's daughter who's now like the witch's slave. So as the story goes on, the witch keeps fighting and battling with the woodsman, which is the not yet to be Tin Man. So she curses an axe that he uses to chop the trees down in the forest. He slowly starts losing parts of himself and becoming the Tinkerman. Slowly start turning him into a Tin Man. As the story goes on, he loses himself and kind of loses the one he loves, so he loses his heart, and that's how he ends up stuck in the woods. And then the story ends with the beginning of The Wizard of Oz, with Dorothy falling and hitting the ruby slippers. So that's a good, pretty solid synopsis of the story. So the first thing I want to start with is the departure from neoclassical ideals, especially with like how the characters were designed in the stage, and kind of how they portrayed their emotions. So verisimilitude. So I'll start with how the characters were. They jumped around. I thought at the beginning they were all going to be the kind of the poor munchkins, but they portrayed trees. They used puppetry, music, so it hit the musical theater. It was very whimsical, and it had a lot of magic and supernatural happening. So the forest would move, but it was just the actors holding tree branches, moving them like the forest was breathing, interacting with the other characters. So very character change. For example, the same character who played the woodsman, the Tin Man, also played the couple's small child, the baby, as a grown man with kind of a different persona. He kind of crossed his eyes and got on the ground on his knees and pretended to be the baby, which was not exactly neoclassical. It very jump around. There was very little unities of place. So they jumped all around. So, for example, they would jump from the forest to the witch's house, back to the woods with the woodsman. It was very jump skippy. They would use lighting and like directional change, like to pull the audience eyes away to certain pieces of the stage as completely different locations, which I thought was really cool, and it was interesting how they were able to do that. And then the use of puppets, which I thought was kind of interesting. So that's more of like a modern theater, or like a combination of like many different styles. So they use the music with the puppets, with lighting, and with actor motion to kind of give the puppets more life on stage, which I thought was really cool and not really something I've ever seen before. So the woodsman was, well, the Tin Man was basically on strings, or the audience, the actors would grab and move him around. But with the music and lighting, it kind of felt like he was alive on stage. Same way with the witch, which it just kind of changed characters so much it didn't really keep true to place, true to time. So there's a bunch of time jumps. For example, the woodsman parents, all in 30 seconds, met, got married. They just turned around on stage and had a baby. That then they just laid like the blanket they were holding him in on the table, and then boom, there it was, kid. And then the story sets off. So they covered years of information in 20 seconds. So if you went to the bathroom, you'd kind of miss that part. So that's not very neoclassical of them. I want to hit on the commedia dell'arte portion of the story. There's a couple parts that were just really great. So the comedic elements, like the son trying to cut down a tree in the beginning of the story, just could not figure it out. The woodsman just was like, he's dropping the axe, swinging really hard, like just missing his dad's head. It was just kind of funny. There's fourth wall breaks with like sarcastic glances at the audience, which again is a pull from neoclassical and more towards a modern theater. So it was like a very good way to like make an emotional connection with the audience, which I thought was really kind of cool. Let me think. Oh, the escaped. Okay, it's probably one of my more favorite. When they first meet woodsman and the maid, or the witch's maid, the love interest for him, his heart. They have a really great interaction where they're making puppets with the fire. They're trying to cut trees down, and it's just kind of, a dorky, quirky love story at the time, but it was cute. But there's a lot of really funny parts, So she fell asleep, you kind of glance at the audience, well, what do I do now? Which is very funny, but it's a very modern style of play, so that never really, it's practically a character break, which really isn't popular yet, and it wasn't even popular in Restoration Theater or neoclassical Spanish. No country kind of, up until later in history, kind of pulled that kind of stuff, so I thought that was really cool. I want to hit on how this is kind of more of a style of modern theater. They pulled from a lot of different styles of acting and music, so they didn't really use music in the way you would think. There wasn't like coordinated dances per se, but it was the use of music to give emotion. So the characters would interact with the music basically to tell the story. So the music would change. They would all grab, something or move, or they would shine lights to like give a sign of reverence to a piece of, like the Ruby Slippers always had 2 or 3 actors pointing a flashlight at them to light them up, and then they would change kind of the sequencing of it, which I thought was very cool. And the music was used as an accompaniment, so it wasn't acting, music, acting, musical number. It was pieced throughout and used to try to tell the story or throughout time. So I thought that was really cool. The one really kind of a beautiful part of the story was there's only one word, so the whole story was told without words basically, because they weren't allowed to really speak because the witch could hear what all they were saying, and it was please, save him. She just said please, and I thought that was just kind of cool, and it caught me off guard when she kind of yelled it, and it's kind of what got the Tin Man to become the Tin Man, because that's when they built him. So one little more abstract pull that I wanted to get to was how this could be portrayed as, I know it's well in the future, but a Restoration Theater style of play. So I thought it was interesting how you could pull a monarch, like a jest of the monarch, so you could be making a mockery of power by basically showing how evil and twisted a monarch is by comparing it to the witch that was controlling the love interest and kind of pushing them apart and taking pieces of the Tin Man away. So basically it was a complete dictatorship of all of the people who lived in the village, all the poor munchkins. They weren't allowed to speak, act, perform magic. Again, big jump, very supernatural, very not neoclassical of them, but still pretty. So they weren't allowed to speak. The crows were everywhere listening, almost like spies, like watching out for the king's interests. So you could kind of pull the card that it was a style of post-Commonwealth, back under a common monarch, pulling away, or English Revolution theater, post that, if you're trying to pull away from a dictatorship. So I think I will finally wrap this up and get to my rating system. So I'm on a 1 to 100 scale of Tin Man hearts. I would have to give this a 90 out of 100 Tin Man hearts. The only part that bothered me, maybe it's a personal vendetta, but he kept going back to the axe, and every time he did, he would lose a piece of himself, Again, it's not that I don't get it, and I know that he had to lose everything to become the Tin Man, and it developed a story, but it just kind of bothered me that he didn't figure it out, and that every time he went to the woods and got hit by an axe, he would lose a piece of his legs or his arm, which is just really I don't know. Maybe it's frustrating, but that's just me. I understand it was important to the story, and it definitely added a piece of, it definitely, pushed the story along, but still, I just found it a little frustrating to have to witness that every single piece of this, every time he'd walk out to the woods. Clearly the axe was cursed. I know, as a person watching, you feel like you know more than the actors or the story, but still. So I do believe that is my full performance review of The Woodsman. Thank you.